The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the dark void between stars. Inside its gleaming halls, representatives from 12 different alien species gathered for an emergency meeting. The air buzzed with tension as creatures of all shapes and sizes took their seats in the great council chamber. Velthar stood at the center podium, his crystal-like skin catching the light from above. As leader of the Zentari Empire, he commanded respect from the other council members. His voice echoed through the chamber as he began to speak. "Friends and allies, we face a great danger today. The humans have grown too powerful, too quickly. In just 300 years, they have spread across dozens of star systems. Their technology advances faster than we can understand. Their military grows stronger each day." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled aliens. The snake-like Esseskatar representative raised his scaled head and hissed his support. The gas cloud beings, called nebulons, flickered with angry colors as their translator spoke harsh words about human expansion. In the small section reserved for Earth's delegation, 3 humans sat quietly. Ambassador Jiwoo kept his face calm, even as the aliens around him spoke of his people like they were a disease. His gray hair and lined face showed his many years of diplomatic service. Next to him sat Fleet Admiral Minho, a stern woman whose steady gaze watched every speaker. The youngest member of their group was Hyerim, a diplomatic aide who gripped her datapad tightly as she listened to the accusations. "The humans call themselves peaceful," continued a representative from the insect-like Krell collective, clicking, his mandibles in disgust. "But look how they build their ships. Look how they train their soldiers. They prepare for war while speaking of friendship." Velthar nodded gravely. "Exactly my point. When the humans first reached the stars, we welcomed them. We shared our knowledge and our trade routes. We thought they would be grateful junior members of our great alliance. Instead, they have taken everything we taught them and made it better. They improve our technology faster than we created it. Their medicine saves lives we couldn't save. Their ships travel routes we thought impossible. That is the problem," hissed the Sesktar delegate. "They make us look weak. They make our ancient wisdom seem foolish. How can we maintain order when one young species outshines us all?" The Nebulon representative's translated voice filled the chamber. "They contaminate the purity of our established ways. Before humans arrived, we had peace. We had order. Each species knew their place. Now they upset the natural balance with their constant questions and improvements." Admiral Minho's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. Ambassador Jiwoo placed a gentle hand on her arm, a quiet reminder to stay calm. He had seen this kind of fear before, though never on such a scale. "We must act before it's too late," Velthar declared. "The humans have colonies in 47 star systems within Council space. They operate trade stations, research facilities, and military outposts. Every day they grow stronger while we grow more dependent on their innovations." The chamber erupted in overlapping voices as each species added their complaints. The crystalline Vorthak claimed humans had made their meditation practices obsolete with new healing techniques. The machine-like synthetics complained that human artificial intelligence had surpassed their own ancient programs. Even the proud, ethereals, beings of pure energy, admitted that human quantum research threatened their understanding of reality itself. "What do you propose?" asked the delegate from the Aquatic Federation, her gills fluttering with nervousness. Velthar's crystal form seemed to glow brighter. "Complete expulsion. We give the humans 30 standard days to remove all their people, ships, and equipment from Council space. Any human presence after that deadline will be considered an act of war." The vote was swift. One by one, each alien species raised their appendages, tentacles, or energy fields in agreement. 12 votes for expulsion. 0 against. The humans were not allowed to vote on their own fate. Ambassador Jiwoo finally stood up. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to the elderly human diplomat. He looked around the room slowly, meeting the gaze of creatures he had worked with for decades. Some looked ashamed, others stared back with defiant anger. "We understand your position," Jiwoo said simply. His voice carried clearly through the chamber without any need for amplification. "Humanity will comply with your demands." That was it. No protests, no threats, no desperate pleas for reconsideration. The simplicity of his response seemed to unnerve several of the alien delegates more than angry shouting would have. As the three humans gathered their materials and prepared to leave, Hirim leaned close to her ambassador. "Sir, shouldn't we fight this? Appeal to their better nature? Remind them of all the good we've done together?" Jiwoo shook his head slightly. "Sometimes, young one, the best way to show someone their mistake is to give them exactly what they asked for." Admiral Minho spoke quietly as they walked toward the exit. "How long do you think it will take them to realize what they've done?" "Not long," Jiwoo replied. "The smart ones already know. That's why they look so worried." As the human delegation left the chamber, an uncomfortable silence settled over the remaining council members. Velthar tried to project confidence as he officially closed the meeting, but several representatives lingered, suddenly seeming less certain about their unanimous decision. The ethereal delegate floated closer to Velthar. The humans seemed calm about this, almost like they expected it. Velthar's crystal form flickered slightly. "What choice did we give them? They'll leave quietly because they have no other option." But as he watched the security feeds showing the human delegation walking steadily toward their ship, Velthar couldn't shake the feeling that Ambassador Jiwoo's calm acceptance meant something more than simple defeat. The old human had looked almost relieved. Within hours, the news of humanity's expulsion spread across the galaxy. Some celebrated the decision, others expressed quiet concern. But in the deepest regions of space, where human colonies had grown and thrived, the reaction was neither anger nor sadness. It was preparation. The evacuation began immediately. Across dozens of star systems, human colonies received the same message from Ambassador Jiwoo. They had 30 days to pack up everything and leave council space forever. What surprised the watching aliens was how calmly humans everywhere accepted this news. On Kepler Station, one of the largest trade hubs in the galaxy, Chief Administrator Dongwu stood in his office overlooking the busy docking bays. Through the massive windows, he could see hundreds of ships coming and going. Many carried the flags of alien nations, but nearly half belonged to human companies. By tomorrow, his people would begin shutting down operations that had taken 15 years to build. "Sir," his assistant said nervously, "the Zentari Trade Authority is asking if we can leave our warehouse systems running. They say it would be a shame to waste such efficient infrastructure." Dongwu almost smiled. "Tell them we're taking our equipment with us. All of it." "But sir, the fusion reactors alone are worth millions of credits. Surely we could sell them. Those reactors were built by human engineers using human designs. The council wanted us gone. They didn't say anything about leaving gifts behind." The assistant looked confused. "What about the medical synthesizers? The Krell Collective has sick colonists who depend on those machines." "The Krell Collective voted to expel us," Dongwu replied calmly. "I'm sure they have their own medical technology." As the day progressed, alien representatives began arriving at the station with increasingly desperate offers. They wanted to buy human technology, lease human facilities, or hire human workers as independent contractors who wouldn't technically be part of the human government. Dongwu met with each delegation politely but firmly. The answer was always the same. Humans were leaving, and they were taking everything that belonged to them. By the third day, panic had begun to set in among the alien traders. The Zentari delegation arrived with an offer to purchase the entire human quarter of the station for 10 times its original value. "I'm sorry," Dongwu told them, "but we're not selling. We built this facility, and we're taking it apart to rebuild elsewhere. But where? Demanded the lead Zentari negotiator. You have nowhere to go. Without council space, you'll be trapped in the Outer Rim territories. Dongwu's smile was polite, but revealed nothing. I'm sure we'll manage. Across the galaxy, similar. Scenes played out on every human world and station. Dr. Nayan, head of the Human Medical Research Consortium, began shutting down joint projects that had been running for decades. When Eschatar scientists begged her to at least leave behind her research data, she politely declined. The council decided they didn't want human contamination of their pure society, she explained to a room full of desperate alien researchers. I'm simply respecting that decision. The Eschatar chief scientist's scales turned pale. But the crop disease on our farming worlds. Your research was developing a cure. I'm sure your own scientists can solve the problem, Nayan replied gently. After all, you did call our methods primitive during the last conference. Meanwhile, Taehyun's shipping company began the massive task of redirecting their entire fleet. His ships had been carrying cargo along routes that connected dozens of alien worlds. The mathematical precision of his flight plans had reduced travel time by more than half on many trade routes. When the Aquatic Federation sent a delegation begging him to continue his shipping services, Taehyun reviewed their request carefully. I appreciate your concern, he told them, but my company operates within human space. Since you've decided that human space no longer includes Council territory, we'll be focusing our efforts elsewhere. But the shipping routes will collapse, protested the aquatic delegate. It will take months to establish new supply lines. I'm confident the Council's advanced civilizations will adapt quickly, Taehyun said. His tone was perfectly respectful, which somehow made his words sting worse than sarcasm would have. The most critical evacuations were happening quietly, away from alien attention. Admiral Minho personally oversaw the withdrawal of human military assets. What the council members didn't realize was that human ships had been providing more than just defense for human colonies. They had been running patrol routes that protected alien shipping from pirates, monitoring space lanes for hazards, and maintaining the sensor networks that tracked dangerous asteroids. Ma'am, reported Captain Soman from the bridge of the Human Dreadnought Incheon. The Ethereals are asking if we can delay the withdrawal of our deep space monitoring stations. Delay? Minho asked. On what grounds? They claim there's a rogue asteroid cluster moving through their territory. Without our sensor network, they won't detect it until it's too late to evacuate their mining stations. Minho considered this for a moment. Send them our last sensor readings and wish them luck. Our equipment leaves with us. As the evacuation continued, more problems began to surface. On Nexus Prime itself, the massive space station that housed the Galactic Council, Chief Engineer Seo Jin was quietly documenting all the human-designed systems that kept the station running. The environmental controls are hybrid systems, he explained to his replacement, a Vorthak engineer who had never worked with human technology. Our quantum processors handle the atmospheric recycling calculations. The alien systems provide the raw power, but they can't handle the complex math required to keep 2 million beings alive in vacuum. The Vorthak engineer's crystal body pulsed with worry. How long will the current settings last without maintenance? Maybe 3 weeks, Seojin said honestly. After that, you'll need to replace the entire system with something your people can understand. 3 weeks? The council sessions alone last longer than that. Seojin nodded sympathetically. I submitted upgrade proposals every year for the past decade. The council always said human technology was unnecessary. I'm sure they have alternatives prepared. The Vorthak engineer's crystals flickered desperately. What if we hired you as a consultant? Technically, you wouldn't be a government representative. I appreciate the offer, Seojin replied. But I've already accepted a position with the New Terra Colonial Engineering Corps. We're building something exciting in the outer systems. By the end of the second week, the true scope of human integration into galactic society was becoming clear. Traffic control systems failed as human-designed navigation programs shut down. Trade calculations that had been automated for years suddenly required manual oversight that few aliens understood. Medical facilities found themselves unable to synthesize certain medicines without human-programmed molecular assemblers. The mathematician Ji-hoon had spent years developing the elegant equations that made faster-than-light travel safer and more efficient. His work had been published in the Galactic Scientific Consortium's journals, but most alien scientists had dismissed it as interesting but impractical. Now, as human navigation systems went offline, ships found themselves taking much longer routes through hyperspace. Ambassador Jiwoo received increasingly frantic messages from council members as the evacuation continued. Some offered to reconsider the expulsion. Others begged for extended deadlines. A few even suggested that perhaps humans could maintain special observer status while technically being outside the council. To each message, Jiwoo sent the same polite reply. Humanity appreciates the council's concern, but we remain committed to respecting the decision made by the democratic vote of the Galactic Council. On the 28th day, as the last human ships prepared to leave council space, Velthar himself sent a personal message to Jiwoo. The crystal being's usual arrogance had been replaced by barely concealed desperation. "Perhaps we acted hastily," the message read. "Surely we can find a compromise that benefits everyone." Jiwoo's response was brief. The time for compromise was before the vote. Humanity looks forward to building new relationships beyond council. Space. As the final countdown began, Admiral Minho broadcast one last message from the departing human fleet. "To our former allies in the Galactic Council, we wish you well in your future endeavors. May you find the peace and purity you sought. Perhaps our paths will cross again under better circumstances." The last human ship crossed out of council space exactly at the deadline. Behind them, they left empty stations, silent trade routes, and the growing realization among 12 alien species that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The problem started within hours of the human departure. On the Zentari homeworld, alarms began blaring in the Planetary Defense Center. The massive shield generators that protected their cities from their dying stars' radiation were showing critical errors. General Caxmore stared at the warning displays in growing panic. Red lights flashed across dozens of monitoring screens. The quantum field stabilizers that maintained their protective shields were failing one by one. "Get me Chief Engineer Gunwoo immediately," he barked at his communications officer. "Sir," the officer replied nervously. "Engineer Gunwoo departed yesterday with the human evacuation fleet." The general's crystal form flickered with shock. "What? But he was just a maintenance technician." "Actually, sir, according to our records, he designed most of the upgrades to our shield system over the past 8 years. The previous Zentari engineers could never solve the quantum resonance problems." Caxmore felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. "Send a priority message to the human fleet. Offer Gunwoo whatever he wants to come back." The message was sent, but no reply came. By the end of the first day, 3 shield generators had completely failed. Emergency evacuations began in the affected cities as deadly radiation leaked through the gaps in their protection. On the other side of the galaxy, the Sectar Republic faced their own crisis. Minister Velshak slithered through the Agricultural Monitoring Center, his scales turning dark with stress as he read the reports from their farming worlds. "How bad is it?" he asked the chief agricultural scientist. "Catastrophic," came the reply. "The human-developed crop strains are dying across 7 planets. Without Dr. Yuna's specialized nutrient formulas, the plants can't survive in our soil." Velshak's tongue flicked out nervously. "But we have our own agricultural experts. Surely they can recreate the human methods?" The scientist's head drooped. "We tried, Minister, but the humans used a completely different approach than our traditional methods. They analyzed our soil at the molecular level and designed specific nutrient combinations for each field. Our people know how to grow food, but we never learned their detailed chemistry. Contact Dr. Yuna immediately. Offer her triple her old salary. We tried, sir. Her new research station is outside council space. Our messages aren't getting through. By the third day, food riots had begun on 2 Eschatar worlds. The emergency food reserves would last maybe 6 months. After that, millions would starve. Meanwhile, in space, the collapse of human-maintained trade routes was causing chaos throughout the galaxy. Captain Drix of the merchant vessel Stardrifter found himself trapped in hyperspace, unable to calculate a safe exit vector. "What do you mean the navigation computer doesn't work?" he demanded of his engineer. "The system requires human-designed quantum processors to handle the complex mathematics," the engineer explained. "Without them, we can only use the old calculation methods." "How long will that take?" "About 6 hours per jump, instead of 6 minutes. Captain Drix groaned. His delivery schedule was already impossible. Adding 6 hours to every jump would make it completely hopeless. Across the galaxy, thousands of other ships faced the same problem. Cargo deliveries that used to take days now took weeks. On Nexus Prime, the crisis was becoming life-threatening. Environmental engineer Cristal watched in horror as the atmospheric recycling systems began to fail. The Vorthak engineer who had replaced Seojin stood beside him, his crystal form flickering with panic. "The oxygen levels are dropping in sectors 7 through 12, Cristal reported. "Carbon dioxide is building up faster than the scrubbers can handle it." "How is that possible?" demanded Council Leader Velthar, who had rushed to the engineering center. "This station has operated for centuries." "Yes, sir," the Vorthak engineer replied, "but the human upgrades increased our capacity by 400%. The old systems can't handle the current population load." Velthar's crystal form dimmed. "Can we reduce the population?" "To what level, sir?" "We'd need to evacuate 80% of the station just to bring the systems back into balance." The irony was not lost on anyone present. In order to save the Galactic Council headquarters, they would have to exile most of the council members. Emergency messages flooded the communication networks as each alien species discovered how dependent they had become on human innovation. The Aquatic Federation found that their underwater cities' pressure regulators had been quietly upgraded with human technology over the years. Without maintenance, the systems were beginning to fail, threatening to crush their inhabitants under the ocean's weight. The machine-like synthetics faced perhaps the most embarrassing crisis of all. Their artificial intelligence networks, which they considered the pinnacle of digital evolution, had been secretly enhanced by human programmers. As those enhancements began to degrade without updates, their AIs started making increasingly poor decisions. "Our traffic control AI just routed 60 ships into the same docking bay," reported Synthetech Unit Prime 7. "And our planetary defense AI is targeting our own ships as potential threats." The proud ethereals, beings of pure energy who considered themselves superior to all physical species, discovered that their latest quantum research facilities couldn't function without human-designed stabilization fields. Years of breakthrough. Discoveries suddenly seemed meaningless as their equipment shut down one piece at a time. Dr. Nayon's medical research had been protecting people across dozens of worlds. As her programs ended, diseases that had been controlled for years began to resurface. The Krell Collective watched helplessly as a plague spread through their colonies, a plague that human medicine had been quietly suppressing. "Send another message." "To Dr. Nayon!" ordered the Krell Queen, clicking her mandibles in distress. "Offer her anything she wants." "Your Majesty," replied her communications specialist, "we've sent 47 messages. None have been answered." 3 weeks after the human departure, Velthar called an emergency council session. Only 8 of the 12 species attended. 2 were dealing with environmental disasters on their homeworlds. 1 was fighting a civil war that had erupted when their human-maintained surveillance systems failed. The last was completely unreachable, their communication networks having collapsed entirely. "We need to contact the humans," Velthar announced without preamble. "We need to negotiate their return." "On what terms?" asked the Nebulon representative, its gaseous form flickering weakly. "We expelled them. Why would they want to come back?" "We offer them better trade agreements," suggested the Sectar delegate. "More favorable territory allocations." The Aquatic Federation representative shook her head. "We tried that. They're not responding to any of our messages." "Then we send a delegation," Velthar decided. "We go to them directly and negotiate face-to-face." It took another week to organize the expedition. When the Council's diplomatic ship finally reached the edge of what had once been Council space, they found something that made their alien hearts skip beats: a massive defensive network stretched across dozens of star systems. Automated weapons, platforms, shield generators, and patrol ships formed an impenetrable barrier between Council space and whatever lay beyond. The humans hadn't just left Council territory, they had built a wall. As the Council ship approached the barrier, they received a polite but firm message. "This is the Human Border Defense Network. Council vessels are not permitted beyond this point. Please state your business." For the first time since the expulsion vote, Velthar truly understood what they had done. The humans hadn't been planning to leave. They had been planning to be expelled, and they had been ready for it. 6 months had passed since the humans left Council space, and the galaxy was falling apart. The proud Galactic Council now met in emergency session every week, trying to manage one crisis after another. Today, only 7 species were represented. The others were too busy dealing with disasters on their own worlds to attend. Velthar looked around the nearly empty Council chamber. Where once 12 proud species had gathered to rule the galaxy, now a handful of desperate survivors begged for solutions to problems they couldn't solve. "The situation grows worse each day," reported the Krell Queen through her translator. "The plague has spread to 14 colonies. Without human medical support, we've lost 3 million citizens." The Zentari representative, who was attending virtually because his homeworld was too dangerous to leave, delivered even worse news. "Our shield network is down to 30% capacity. We're evacuating our major cities daily as radiation levels spike. Our people are dying." "What about the Eschatar Republic?" Velthar asked, though he dreaded the answer. The snake-like delegate's scales had lost their color entirely. "We no longer exist as a unified republic. 7 worlds have declared independence, rather than face starvation. The central government controls only our homeworld and 2 orbital stations." Each report was worse than the last. The Synthetech Collective had split into warring factions when their AI networks began targeting each other. The Aquatic Federation was evacuating their deep ocean cities as life support systems failed. The Nebulan expanses had contracted back to their original territories as their exploration fleets became lost in space without human navigation systems. "Perhaps," suggested the ethereal delegate, its energy form flickering weakly, "we should try offering the humans complete autonomy within Council space. They could govern themselves while technically remaining part of our alliance." Velthar shook his head sadly. "We've tried every possible offer. Better trade terms, technology sharing agreements, territorial concessions, even tribute payments. They won't even respond to our messages. Have we tried sending a formal apology?" asked the aquatic representative. 17 times, Velthar replied, each one more desperate than the last. What the council members didn't know was that their messages were being received. On the human border station New Seoul, Communications Officer Somin read each alien plea to the senior staff during their daily briefings. "The Zentari are offering us 50% of their mining revenues in exchange for restoring their shield generators," she reported to the assembled officers. "The Eschatar are promising us 3 entire star systems if we'll just send 1 agricultural specialist." Admiral Minho listened to the reports with a mixture of sadness and determination. Any response from the council leadership? Velthar sent. Another personal message, Soman continued. He's offering to resign and let humans take over the council presidency. The room fell silent. Even the youngest officers understood the significance of that offer. For a Zentari leader to suggest giving up power to another species was unprecedented. What do we tell them? Asked Captain Jungwoo. Admiral Minho stood and walked to the massive window overlooking the border defense network. Beyond those automated, weapons and shields lay the ruins of what had once been a proud galactic civilization. We tell them the same thing we've been telling them, she said quietly. We're not interested in returning to council space under any circumstances. Meanwhile, deep in human territory, the real work was being done. On the planet Nova Terra, Ambassador Jiwoo met with representatives from a very different group of visitors. These weren't proud council members making demands. These were refugees. The delegation consisted of ordinary citizens from worlds the council could no longer protect. Farmers whose crops were dying, engineers whose systems were failing, scientists whose research had stopped. They came not as conquerors or rulers, but as people who needed help. Please, said the Vorthak civilian, engineer, his crystal form dim with exhaustion. Our children are dying. The life support systems on our colony worlds are failing, and we don't know how to fix them. Dr. Nyan, who was attending the meeting as part of the human response team, spoke gently. What happened to your own engineers? They were trained. On the old systems, the Vorthak replied. When your people upgraded our technology, we never learned how the new systems worked. We were too proud to ask. Jiwoo exchanged glances with the other humans in the room. This was exactly what they had been waiting for. We're willing to help, Jiwoo said carefully, but not through the council. We've learned that governments can change their minds too easily. We want to work directly with your people. What do you mean? Asked a Siskatar farmer who had traveled 3 months to reach human space. We'll send medical teams to help with the plague, Dr. Naon explained. We'll provide technical support for failing systems. We'll share our agricultural knowledge. But we do this as partners, not as subjects or rulers. The refugees looked confused. After centuries of hierarchical government, the concept of true partnership was foreign to them. You would help us even though your own government expelled you? Asked the Vorthak engineer. Your governments expelled us, corrected Admiral Minho, who had joined the meeting. You didn't. You're just ordinary people trying to survive. Over the following weeks, the trickle of refugees became a flood. Entire populations began leaving council space, seeking protection and aid from the humans they had been taught to fear. The humans welcomed them, but with conditions. Everyone works, explained Yunji, the human officer in charge of refugee resettlement. Everyone contributes. We don't care what species you are or where you came from. If you want human help, you help build something better. The results were remarkable. Alien engineers worked alongside human technicians to develop new technologies. Eskatar farmers learned human agricultural methods while teaching humans about their own soil conditions. Vorthak crystal growers collaborated with human physicists to create new types of energy storage. For the first time in galactic history, different species were working as true equals rather than in rigid hierarchies. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council grew more desperate. With their populations fleeing to human territory, their remaining resources were stretched impossibly thin. Velthar found himself ruling an empire that controlled vast territories but contained almost no one to rule. Sir, his aide reported, we've intercepted communications from the human border. They're not just taking our refugees, they're integrating them into their society. Aliens are serving in human military units. Mixed species research teams are making breakthrough discoveries. Velthar's crystal form flickered with a realization that terrified him. They're not trying to conquer us. They're replacing us. Sir, don't. You see? They don't need to invade council space. They're building something better outside it. Eventually, everyone will choose to leave us and join them." The aide remained silent, but they both knew Velthar was right. Reports from human territory described cities where multiple species lived and worked together peacefully, research stations producing incredible discoveries through interspecies cooperation, and a growing fleet of mixed-species crews exploring new regions of the galaxy. In contrast, Council space was becoming a wasteland. Empty worlds orbited dead systems. Ancient space stations drifted unpowered through the void. The proud civilizations that had once ruled the galaxy were reduced to governing empty territories and fighting over the scraps of their former glory. Velthar made one final decision. Against the protests of his remaining advisors, he ordered a ship prepared for a personal journey to human space. If the Council was going to survive, he would have to do something no Zentari leader had ever done before. He would have to humble himself before the species he had tried to destroy. 1 year after the expulsion, the Galactic Council existed only in name. 3 of the original 12 species had completely abandoned their territories to join human colonies. 4 others had split into smaller groups, with some factions choosing to remain independent while others sought protection from humans. The proud alliance that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was crumbling into dust. On the human border station New Sol, Captain Yunji watched the latest group of refugee ships approach through the defensive perimeter. These weren't desperate civilians fleeing dying worlds. These were the former rulers themselves. "Admiral," she reported to Minho, "we have an unusual request for entry." It's Velthar himself, along with representatives from 5 surviving Council species. They're asking for an audience with human leadership. Admiral Minho studied the sensor readings showing the small, worn-looking ships approaching their border. Any military escorts? None. In fact, their ships are barely functioning. It looks like they patched together whatever vessels they could find. Through the view screen, they could see the once mighty Zentari leader's ship. Its crystal hull, which had once gleamed like a jewel, was now cracked and dim. The other vessels showed similar signs of decay and desperation. Grant them entry, Minho decided. But take them to Conference Room 7, not the main diplomatic center. Let them see how we handle ordinary business, not ceremonial meetings. Meanwhile, on the planet Nova Terra, the Human Colonial Congress was in heated debate. News of the alien leader's arrival had sparked intense discussion about humanity's future relationship with their former oppressors. Representative Chanwu, the youngest member ever elected to the Congress, stood to address the assembly. "These are the same beings who called us contaminated, who said we were too dangerous to exist alongside them. Why should we help them now?" Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. Many humans felt that the aliens deserved whatever fate awaited them. But philosopher Kiwan, elderly and respected, rose slowly to respond. "Young friend, I understand your anger. We all do. But look at what we've built here." He gestured to the viewing screens showing mixed-species cities thriving across human territory. "We didn't build this through revenge. We built it through being better than those who wronged us." "Better how?" challenged Representative Minseo. "By forgetting what they did to us?" "By remembering what we learned from it," Kiwan replied. "We learned that fear makes people do terrible things. We learned that pride can blind entire civilizations. Most importantly, we learned that the only way to build something lasting is through cooperation, not domination." In the audience, Dr. Neon nodded thoughtfully. Over the past year, she had worked with refugee scientists from a dozen different species. The medical breakthroughs they had achieved together far exceeded anything any single species had accomplished alone. "The question isn't whether they deserve our help," she said, standing to join the debate. "The question is whether we want to be the kind of people who help or the kind who turn away when others are suffering." Ambassador Jiwoo, who had remained silent throughout the debate, finally spoke. "They're waiting at our border. Whatever we decide, we should decide it together and communicate it clearly. That's what civilized people do. The vote was closer than anyone expected. By a margin of just 12 votes, the Congress decided to meet with the alien delegation. But they also set strict conditions for any future cooperation. When Velthar and his fellow leaders finally sat across from the human negotiating team, the contrast was striking. The aliens looked exhausted, desperate, and broken. Their once proud uniforms were faded and patched. Their confident bearing had been replaced by the hunched postures of defeat. Across from them sat humans who looked healthy, confident, and prosperous. But more importantly, they were accompanied by alien advisors and colleagues who clearly held positions of real authority and respect. "We come to ask for your help," Velthar began, his crystal form flickering weakly. "Our civilizations are dying. Our people are fleeing to your territory. We have nothing left to offer except our surrender." Ambassador Jiwoo studied the alien leader carefully. "What exactly are you surrendering? Your empty territories? Your broken fleets? Your failed governments?" The bluntness of the question seemed to surprise Velthar. We surrender our authority, our claim to rule. We ask to be allowed to join your alliance as junior members." "We don't have an alliance," replied Admiral Minho. "We have a community. Everyone contributes according to their abilities. Everyone benefits according to their needs. There are no senior or junior members." The Essektar representative, his scales now pale with malnutrition, spoke desperately. "Please, we'll accept any terms. Our people are starving. Our worlds are dying." Dr. Nyon leaned forward. "Your people aren't starving. Over 2 million Essektar citizens have joined our agricultural colonies. They're well-fed and productive. It's your governments that are dying, not your people." The truth of that statement hung heavy in the air. The alien leaders had come seeking to preserve their power, but the humans weren't interested in dealing with failed governments. "Here's what we propose," said Jiwoo. "We'll provide humanitarian aid to any world that needs it. We'll share our technology and expertise freely. We'll welcome any individual or group that wants to join our communities. But we won't prop up the political systems that created this disaster in the first place." Velthar's crystal form grew even dimmer. "You're asking us to dissolve our governments?" "We're not asking you to do anything," replied Admiral Minho. "We're telling you what we're willing to do. If you want to maintain your old power structures while your people suffer, that's your choice." The ethereal representative, its energy form barely visible, spoke with a voice like static. "What about our territories? Our star systems?" "What about them?" asked Captain Yunji. "If you can't maintain them, they'll become uninhabited space. If people want to settle there, they can apply for colonial charters through our standard process." "Our standard process?" Velthar asked. "Mixed species colonial teams," explained Jiwoo. "No single species can claim exclusive territory. Everyone works together, or no one gets approved." The alien leaders exchanged desperate glances. This wasn't the negotiation they had expected. The humans weren't interested in conquest or domination. They were offering something much more radical: equality. "How long do we have to decide?" asked the Krell representative. "Take all the time you need," said Admiral Minho, standing to indicate. The meeting was over. "But understand that we're not waiting for your decision. We're building the future with whoever chooses to join us." As the alien delegation was escorted back to their ships, Velthar lingered behind. "Ambassador Jiwoo," he said quietly, "I need to know something. Did you plan this? Did you know this would happen when we expelled you?" Jiwoo considered the question carefully. "We knew that fear and pride make poor foundations for civilization. We knew that cooperation produces better results than domination. We hoped that eventually others would learn the same lessons." "But you were ready," Velthar pressed. "The defense networks, the new colonies, the integration systems for refugees, you had it all prepared." "We were ready for many possibilities," Jiwoo admitted, "including the possibility that some people would choose wisdom over fear. Velthar's crystal form flickered one last time. And if we choose fear again? Then you'll face the consequences of that choice, just like you did the last time. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. The former Galactic Council territories had been reorganized into the Cooperative Commonwealth, governed by elected representatives from all member species. The old hierarchies were gone, replaced by a system where contribution and merit mattered more than species or origin. Velthar himself had chosen to step down from all leadership positions. He now worked as a junior engineer on a mixed species terraforming project, learning human construction techniques alongside Eschatar farmers and Krell scientists. On the first anniversary of the Commonwealth's founding, he stood on the observation deck of a space station that had been built by dozens of different species working together. Through the transparent walls, he could see human and alien children playing together in the station's gardens. "Strange," he said to the human engineer working beside him. "How we spent so long fearing you, when we should have been learning from you." The human, a young woman named Youngji, smiled. "You weren't ready to learn back then. Fear makes it hard to listen." "And now? Now you're here, helping us build something better," she replied. "That's all that matters." As Velthar watched the children play, he finally understood what the humans had been trying to show them all along. Strength wasn't about domination or control. True strength came from lifting others up, from building something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The galaxy was finally at peace, but it was a peace built on cooperation rather than conquest, on understanding rather than fear. And at its heart were the humans who had been cast out for being too dangerous, who had proven their worth not through revenge, but through the radical act of showing their enemies a better way to live.